Okay, now we're on the next part, test number 6. Okay. So to find the area of the triangle, it's actually given to us on the reference sheet that we will be getting on the test. It's half of AB sine C. Um, it says K equals, but I'm just gonna say area. Area equals half of AB sine C. Okay, great. So now we can plug this straight into our calculator. Area equals half 5 6 sine 140, right? Because it's 5 6 or whatever it may be. I think it's actually the other way around. 5 6 140, and that's sine C over there, the angle. So, and also make sure your calculators are in degree mode. So half 5 6 sine 140 equals 9.64, and that is our final area. 9.64, and don't forget the units, by the way. So it says inch, so you write inch squared. That's the final thing. Okay. Now find the area of a rhombus that has a side of 5 feet and an angle of 60 degrees. So let's first draw a rhombus. A rhombus is the shape with the diagonal lines. It looks kind of like a square. Oh, that's not meant to happen. Okay. We have 60, right? And sides, since all sides are equal, they're both sides of 5, so an angle of a this shape is just AB sine C without the half. If it's not a triangle, it's not in half. Like, because the reason that triangle is in half is because, when you cut a square in half, it becomes a triangle, two triangles. So, yeah, this is the whole thing behind it. So, let's get that. So, 5 5 sine 60, and so 5 5 sine 60. It's 21.65 feet squared, because it says feet over here. Okay, so nearest meter, find the area of a parallelogram. So this is the same thing as the rhombus. So 35, 8, and 10, right? Because this is a parallelogram, and it's telling us which thing, each whatever it is, each side is. And so it's the same formula. You'll end up with 45.89, but to save time, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Area of parallelogram with side lengths. Okay, so now this is where it gets fun. So we have A equals AB sine C. Yes? Here, let's draw this out, by the way, to make it more simple. Okay, so now, since we already have the area, we're going to put this area, which is 100 meters squared, into filling in the A. So 100 equals 10, 20 sine C, since we don't have sine C. Okay, so 100 equals, since 10 times 20 is 200, sine C. 200 divide, since we want to get rid of that 200, we're going to divide by 200 on both sides. And that is 1 over 2 sine negative 1 over 2, because I forgot to first do this part. Sine negative 1 to get rid of this sign, because we don't like a sign there. So we cross that out, and since sine to the negative 1/2, we can put that into here. Second, sine negative 1 1/2 is 30, and there's your answer. Okay, Now we're going to find sine 180. So since you just, for this, you just have to know your circle, your, what's it called? Uh, Unit circle. So always know that sine is the y, right? Sine is the y, cosine is the x, cosecant for that is 1 over y, secant is 1 over the x. Well, no, is 1 over sine. Sorry. So it would be the 1 over y, but anyway, yeah. And tangent is sine over cosine, and cotangent is cosine over sine. Just remember that. That's just memorization. You have to know that in order to do these problems. And then the unit circle. So on your unit circle, let's draw it here. And you could load up a picture online. Let's put it right here where we have room. Okay. Alright. Then you have this graph. Yes, this is the cross is a graph, okay? So this is 90 degrees, 180, 270, and 360, or 0. Okay, so at the 90, you're always going to have 0 and 1. This is your x, this is your y. Okay, 0, 1. And over here, you're going to, at the 180, 1, 0. You have to remember this. And then 270, it's negative 1. No, sorry. Why isn't this working? Okay. Yeah, you have negative, sorry, you have 0 and negative 1. And over here, you have 1, 0. By the way, I forgot to put the negative here. Very, very important. Over here, this is a negative 1. Great. So sine 180, if sine is always the y, and we're at the 180 over here, the y is 0. So sine 180 equals 0. Tangent of pi over 2, pi is 180. Always remember that as well. That is very, very important. Let's see, maybe if you're in the degree thing, no, it won't. Just always have to remember that pi is 180. Drill that into your minds because that is super important. If you forget that, then from here on out, it'll be very rough. So pi over 2 is 90 because 180 over 2 is 90, which would be over here. And tangent is sine over cosine. So the sine by 180, since 1 is y, since y equals 1 over here, so that's right over here, y equals 1, or sine. The cosine is the x, where x equals 0. And you have tangent 1 over sine over cosine, which is 1 over 0. It is undefined because whenever you have a number over 0 divided by 0, it's undefined. And you could also plug that in here for further thing. Yeah. Why isn't this working? Is this dead? No. Oh, that's why. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to erase all that. Okay, now we have secant. Secant is 1 over cosine. So secant 270, we're over here. And if cosine is the x, and the x and the y is like this, so x equals 0. So 1 over 0 is also undefined. And, okay, so now we're at cotangent 270. 270 is also over here. Cotangent is cosine over sine over here. And so way you find that, so cosine is the x, and cosine over 270, the x is 0, so 0 over sine is -1, so 0 over -1. And when 0 is divided by a number, it's always going to equal 0, not necessarily undefined. So it just equals undefined. It equals 0, and that's your answer. Okay. And now, let's go over here. Okay. Now, let's find the exact value of cosine 225. So, what we're going to do here is we have this nice little graph set up. Great. And now we're going to go all the way till 225. So you see how over here it's 270 and here it's 180? So it's somewhere in between here. So the way to find exactly what the angle would be at cosine 225 would be to get what 225 is, since that's the given thing. 225 minus 180, which equals 45. So now you can write 45, and that's the angle of your triangle, right? You're gonna draw a triangle over here. Let me try to draw it a bit bigger. Oops, so that it's more readable. Awesome. See, so 45, and in this case, since it's always going to be a right triangle, you'd have a 45, 45, 90. And in a 45, 45, 90, it's always a 1, -1, well, I guess no, it'd be a 1, 1, rad 2. But see how they're both on the negative side? Because they're to the left, it's going to be -1, -1, rad 2. And the rad 2 is always on the hypotenuse, the diagonal part, the longest line. And so then what you would do is you'd have 1 over -2, since cosine is SOHCAHTOA, so adjacent over hypotenuse. So you'd have -1 over rad 2. And now you cannot ever have a rad 2 in the bottom. So you're going to multiply both parts by rad 2. So you'd end up with negative rad 2 over 2. Because when rad 2 times rad 2, it equals 2, as we discussed in a previous video. And that is your final answer. So I'm going to erase it now, and we're going to move on to the next one. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to skip over to cosecant, because actually, you know what? Would I skip to that? So you know what? I'm going to do cotangent and skip cosecant again. Please text me if you want me to go over cosecant, because we're running out of time. And I'm not exactly sure why my thing says 9:41 a.m. But there you go. Okay, so let's do cotangent 10 pi over 3. Okay, so we have 10 times 180. 10 times 180 is 1800. And 1800 divided by 3 is 600. So now we're going to go, because we want it to be a lot simpler, and we're not going to like go over, let's see, 600 is, because we're going to have to go over the circle much times. We're going to do 600. When it's a number above 360, you're going to do that number minus 360, and you're going to come up with 240. So now you simplify it down to 240. Cotangent 240. And now you know that it's also in between the 180 and the 270. So what we're gonna do is um, find like the again 240 minus 180 equals 60. So now we know our angle is gonna be 60. So let's write that here, 60, and it's always gonna be a 60, 60, 90, 30, 90, whatever, a 30, 60, 90. And in the 30, 60, 90, it's always 1, 2, I guess what would be 1, it would be 1, rad 3, and 2. But since they're also on the negatives here, we're going to have negative 1, negative rad 3, and 2. And the hypotenuse is never going to be a negative number, because hypotenuse is just, it's not like, I don't know, I forget how someone explained it to me, but just always remember, hypotenuse is always a positive number, no matter what side it's on. Okay, so now we have cotangent, and cotangent is cosine over sine. So actually it is opposite over adjacent. That's what cotangent is. Always remember that. Okay, so negative 1 over negative rad 3. Okay, now we're going to multiply by rad 3 on each side, because we don't like a radical on the bottom. And so we're going to end up with rad 3 over 3. And it's positive because a negative divided by negative is a positive. Okay, I'm going to skip this. Text me if you want it. Find the exact value of the 6 trigonometric functions. Find the value of the 6 trigonometric functions of an angle theta if negative 2, 3 is a point on the terminal side. Okay, I remember this stumped me in the test. Okay, so let's first draw a nice little graph. Awesome. Okay, and okay, so then the terminal side, meaning we're gonna draw it like this. Okay, and negative 2 and 3. So meaning negative 2 will have to be talking about the x, because, and 3 will be talking about the y, because the negative, since it's on the negative side of the x would be negative, but it's a positive y because it's going upwards. If it was going down, if it was below the x, if the y was below the x, then it'd be negative. Above is positive. Same thing for the x. If it was on the left of the y, it's a negative. Right of the y, it's positive. Okay. So now the way we're gonna find the missing side is by doing a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's what you always do, unless you have like the 3, 4, 5 triangles memorized, which isn't always the case. Not all of them have that. You're gonna do negative 2 squared plus 3 squared equals c squared. By the way, the c squared is always the hypotenuse. So if you had the hypotenuse, then it'd be negative 2 squared plus b squared, let's say, equals whatever the hypotenuse is. Or negative 3 squared, yeah. So now let's solve that. I have the answer sheet in front of me, so I'm just going to skip that process. I'm just going to go straight down to, I guess, 13 equals c squared. Sorry. Oh, God. Sorry about that. Again, I'm a little sick today. Okay. So now we're gonna get the square root of both of those. So we have c equals 13. So this is equal to rad 13. So now we have that side. And this is 90. And, okay. So now we're going to find all the 6 trigonometric functions, meaning sine, theta, cosine. I'm just going to skip the writing theta. Just pretend there's a theta next to each of these. And a theta is, for those who don't know, this is a theta. It just means the angle. And yeah. Okay, so sine would be sine, since sine is opposite over hypotenuse, it's 3. And this is theta. And so the opposite is here, adjacent is here, and hypotenuse is here. So 3 over rad 13. And then since we can't have a rad 13 at the bottom, we're going to multiply both sides by rad 13. So we have 3 rad 13 over 13. Okay, now we have cosine. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So it's negative 2 over rad 13. We're going to multiply both sides by rad 13. And we get negative 2 rad 13 over 13. Great. Awesome. I'm going to write lines so it doesn't get confusing. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so tangent. Actually, you know what? I don't know why I did that. Okay. I'm actually gonna erase this part now because I'm running out of space. Okay, tangent equals, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So we have 3 over negative 2, and that's it, since we can't simplify it down. Cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite, because it's the opposite. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosecant, since the opposite of sine, it's just hypotenuse over opposite. And same thing goes for secant and cotangent, where it's just the opposite of whatever the inverse of whatever it's called. Cosecant is, since it's hypotenuse opposite, it's rad 13 over 3. We don't have to simplify further. Secant is, since it is hypotenuse over adjacent, we're going to do rad 13 over negative 2, and there you go. And then cotangent, since it is adjacent over hypotenuse, cotangent, so it'll be negative 2 over 3. And those are all your 6 trigonometric functions for that thing. Now we're going to find the value of 5 sine 90 plus cotangent 7 pi over 4. Wait. Actually, you know what? I'm going to post this video now, and I'll continue this in the next one.